Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about, you guessed it right, the Prism Lyra 2. Because after a long time, I took the plunge and I got me this interface, especially for mixing and mastering duties. And I can tell you that over the years, I had my fair share of interfaces, like Focusrites, RMEs, and even DigiDesign. And I was very curious because I've been following Prism for more than a decade. I've been a big fan, but I've never really had a chance to try any of their interfaces. So I've been using the Lyra 2 for about 10 months now. And I think I have enough experience to tell you about the good, the bad, and the very ugly. Okay, so the ugly part was just a joke. There's literally nothing that's ugly about his interface. I mean, look at this beauty. I remember seeing this interface for the first time more than 10 years ago, and I immediately fell in love with it. So yeah, this baby has been on the market for a long time, and still the specs are more than enough for most professionals who would want to mix or master on it. On the front of the unit, you find a power on button, a standard headphone socket, a volume dial for the headphone with a ring around it that can identify the unit in multi-unit setups by flashing, an assignable volume dial for the outs, which mutes the output if you press it, a sexy LED display for checking levels for both digital and analog ins and outs, along with some LED indicators for certain settings like DI unlock indicator, which is UNL. So it indicates that the SPDIF input is unlocked. The input output indicators, preamp options are green for line or pink for mic, blue for instrument, because you have two high impedance unbalanced jack inputs. So it's fairly simple looking, but it really shows a lot with visual cues, which is amazing if you're not colorblind, of course. Okay, so let's talk about the pros and the cons. I have a rather long list of both in front of me, and I think I will start with the pros. So, first of all, this is an extremely transparent sound that you get from here. It's very, very detailed. So it has the AKM dynamics. I had RMEs with the AKM chips, and it was relatively similar, but it has those micro details that you sometimes get with Sabre interfaces, and I would say this is really a perfect blend. It's strong on the bass side, very detailed and punchy. That was one of the first things I remember I heard. The bass was very, very detailed. And especially, and then you go up to the mid-range, the micro details are out of this world, really. So when it comes to the high frequencies, I would say it's not a night and day difference. It's still extremely transparent, as you would expect from a mastering grade converter. But yeah, I mean, even RMEs are good there nowadays. So the soundstage is precise. I don't necessarily believe it is wider than what I was used to. Maybe a tad bit deeper, so I can hear a little bit more. What's extremely cool, because I have you don't probably see from here, but I have a vinyl setup behind me, and what it could do is it has an RIAA option for the mic preamp. So essentially what you can do is directly connect your turntable to the inputs and digitize vinyl in the best possible format. So it's really crazy. You have extensive mixing options. It's really nothing new or groundbreaking here, but it's good. The control software is good. And there are a ton of smaller features that make sense for mastering engineers, like the verifile error checking, mid-side recording options built in. The overkiller circuit, fantastic, especially if you're running outboard gear as well, or you want to do mastering, going through analog gear, coming back and driving it a little bit more, just like an analog mixer. It's really fantastic. It sounds very, very nice. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on those. In terms of cons, and now there are a lot of cons. Uh, I would say the volume knob is flimsy. It feels cheap. It's a plastic feeling volume knob, and I have a feeling that it will not last for a very long time. That's just, again, my feeling. Okay, so there's no relaying. If you turn the unit on and turn the unit off, you will hear a big popping sound from the speakers. If you have your speakers on and you don't, do the general sequencing. But I mean, I have my Atoms turned on, and it's very frustrating. RME does this for way less money. There are many interfaces that do relaying. It's not a big deal to implement. I don't know why this sort of convenient feature is not here. But I suppose that it's because for mastering engineers and professionals who use external, volume knobs or controllers, then it might make sense to use those, and they just don't care about that feature. I think in 2021 and 2022 it would be normal to do that. The mute and unmute function is instant. There's no gradual raising of the volume or decreasing of the volume, which RME does. It's just weird after switching from RME that some of these things that you feel like would be normal, you don't have it in a high-end interface. The other thing is the unit settings. So you have a very nice control panel. You can set up the inputs, outputs, the routing matrix. You can set up your settings for even the volume knob and everything. And it's cool, but I just cannot get this thing to remember my settings. So I read the user manual. Sometimes it remembers, sometimes it doesn't. It's very clunky. I just don't understand. Every time I turn on the PC, I have to set everything again. It's not a big deal, but it's just not working as intended. So on the back of the unit, there's an Ethernet port. Okay, and that was originally intended for Dante when they announced this interface. It does nothing. I just don't understand that as well. So my biggest gripe is the volume knob. It's flimsy. And to be fair, it would be amazing if Prism made an external controller, just like Dangerous does, or there are many companies doing that, where you could just use an external controller and connect that via Ethernet, and that's it. You can control volume, dim, mute, whatever. It's just a remote control. Why can't you do it, Prism? You should. I think a lot of people would buy it, because whoever bought any of these interfaces have an Ethernet port on the back that's absolutely useless. All right. So the website of Prism is buggy. It's not managed well. The firmware on my unit is higher than the firmware of the website. While registering the device, there was a reCAPTCHA error, and I had to write an email asking them if I did register or not, because the website is crap. They confirmed, customer service is fantastic with Prism, so there's no issue there. But again, many other companies have, not just professional looking, but professional and functioning websites, which are updated. So that's a minus for me. There's no additional software provided. It's not that big of a deal, obviously, but if you don't buy the Ultimate Collection Edition, you really get nothing in terms of software. And the other thing, which is my gripe, is there's no getting started video. So if you're not a professional or not an enthusiast, or you've not been in the business for a long time, or just a hobbyist and you want to have a decent interface, it would be nice to have like an 8-10 minutes YouTube video or something to show you how to get started on the unit and maybe the settings, because there were a few things, even though I know what I'm doing, there were a few things that were surprising to me, and I just needed, I would say, a long time, longer than usual time to understand. So is this the best mastering interface? I would say if you're after a transparent, musical sounding AD and DA in a small and sexy form factor, and you mostly master in stereo, in the box, or with a mastering analog chain, yeah, I would say this is definitely in the top 3. On the other hand, if you want a lot of inputs and outputs and lots of premium features, this is probably not the best choice for you. So there are way better interfaces on the market for people who want that. I have seen that many studios use this solely for the mastering chain, and then they use a secondary or even a third interface for the mixing duties, and just having lots of analog inputs and outputs. So overall, I'm very satisfied. Even with all of the cons, I would not send it back. Obviously, I'm in love with the sound. It's really, really good. I've never heard anything more detailed and transparent than this interface. There are things that Prism could improve, but and I hope they will. But yeah, I'm very happy with my purchase. So if you like this video, share it, like it, and if you're interested in how I use a rotary mixer behind me, then you can check out my video on the Reser 2525.